You're listening to episode 72 of the Fed and Fearless podcast. On today's episode, I'm chatting with Isabel Garza about how to build body trust when you have PCOS. So stay tuned.
Hi, I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm a registered dietitian and coach trained in functional medicine with a passion for helping women just like you ditch perfectionism and use food, fitness, and self-care to fuel your bigger God-given purpose. I believe that it's possible to achieve your biggest life-changing goals without the frustration, obsession, or negative self-talk that so many women subject themselves to every day. All you need are the right tools, the right mindset, and the faith to turn your dreams into reality. I'm here to guide you along the way. The truth is that you are so much more than a body, and I'm on a mission to help you change the way you think and act at a core beliefs level so you can transform your physical, mental, and spiritual health from the inside out. Are you ready to become fed and fearless in your pursuit of a healthy, meaningful life? Welcome to the Fed and Fearless podcast.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fed and Fearless podcast. I'm Laura Schoenfeld. I'm your host as always, and today we have a really awesome guest who just happens to be one of my clients who I got to teach in the Nutrition Business Accelerator, and she's someone who has a really awesome perspective on hormone health, PCOS, and how to build body trust. Now, before we get into this episode, I want to remind you that we have a free training happening this week on Thursday, March 4th, called The 3 Keys of a Six-Figure Nutrition Business. If you're a nutrition entrepreneur, then this is a training that you definitely don't want to miss. This is best for new nutrition business owners who want to build their business the right way, established nutrition business owners who want more paying clients so they can reach 6 figures of revenue and beyond, and it's great for advanced nutrition entrepreneurs who are ready to scale their business from one-to-one to one-to-many. I'm going to teach you the foundations of what you need to know to build a nutrition business that nurtures you and your clients. You'll learn the 3 core elements of a successful nutrition business that you absolutely must have, the 5 big mistakes that nutrition entrepreneurs make when growing an online business and what to do instead, my 5-step strategy for building a nutrition business the right way so you can grow your income and impact more quickly and easily than ever before. And I'll even share with you why I don't teach my students to use Instagram to grow their businesses. Plus, if you show up live, you'll get a free nutrition business audit, which will help you check on your business's health and make the necessary changes to optimize it. So if you want to build your successful nutrition business, I want to see you there on Thursday. Join me at lauraschoenfeld.com/3 keys. That's the number 3, KEYS. And I'll be showing you the 3 key elements of a 6-figure nutrition business that'll allow you to build the business of your dreams without spending hours on social media. Go to lauraschoenfeld.com/3 keys, and I look forward to seeing you in a few days for this webinar. All right, so let's get back to the episode, and I want to introduce you to my guest who, like I said, was a member of my Nutrition Business Accelerator, the first round we did, which was last summer of 2020. And she was someone who definitely stood out to me in the program as someone who had a really unique perspective on hormone health and just a really compassionate viewpoint when it came to helping women with things like functional nutrition, which can oftentimes be a little bit harsh and a little bit overly prescriptive, as opposed to teaching us how to better understand our bodies. So my guest today is Isabel Garza. Isabel is a registered dietitian and owner of Women Wise Nutrition. She specializes in working with women with PCOS and integrates functional medicine strategies with principles of body trust so that these women can eliminate hormone-related symptoms and become the expert of their own bodies. Isabel is passionate about helping women challenge their fears around food while learning to honor their bodies through a gentle approach to their nutrition and lifestyle. She strives to empower women with a deeper understanding of their health so that they can ultimately live their life of purpose. So now that I've read Isabel's intro to you guys, I'm sure you can tell why I love her so much and I love her business so much. It's honestly so similar to what I was doing up until recently when I switched over to business coaching for my business. I had such a strong passion for women's health and hormones and helping women be able to befriend their body, trust their body, and use health to pursue their purpose. So I loved having this conversation with Isabel, and I'm super excited for you all to get to meet her. And without further ado, here is Isabel Garza. All right, everybody. I am super excited to have with me on the show today, Isabel Garza. Welcome to the podcast, Isabel.
Thanks for having me, Laura.
So I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience, people that don't know you yet. I'm sure they will want to get to know you, but I would love to hear your story about why you're so passionate about helping women with PCOS.
Yeah, of course. So like I said, my name is Isabel. I am a registered dietitian and founder of Woman-Wise Nutrition. It's a virtual nutrition counseling practice that really specializes in the intersection of women's health and disordered eating. And so how I kind of came into all of this is I actually have my own experience with hormone dysfunction and specifically PCOS. The catalyst for everything was in college, junior year. Basically, over a summer, I all of a sudden gained a significant amount of weight. And for me, that was really surprising and uncomfortable. I never worried about my weight before. I never really worried about food, thought about it. And so all of a sudden, just not even feeling like I was in my own body felt really scary for me. And so unfortunately, at the time, I was, a nutrition student and really abused, I think, some of the tools that were offered to me. I remember doing an assignment that required me to calorie count. So I used that in a very extreme way and started really getting obsessive around my calories, really exercising really intensely just to try to shrink my body. And I remember just feeling really stressed during that time, really chaotic in my eating during that time. And then about a year later, I went to go see my OB-GYN and got the diagnosis of PCOS. And so that was helpful. I was like, there's vocabulary to this. There's an official diagnosis to it. But I didn't really receive any answers. I got the solution to get on birth control or just to come back when I wanted to get pregnant. And so I left the clinic with this diagnosis, but with the same problems and really no solutions for it. So was still struggling for quite some time and eventually found intuitive eating. So intuitive eating is now I feel like a movement that really helps women kind of recalibrate or people recalibrate with their intuitions and what their body tells them, how to eat when they're hungry, when they're full. And that helped me, I think, to a certain extent. It helped me stop being so obsessive around my food and to really eat enough. Not to feel like hunger was a normal thing to experience all the time, and also not to fear hunger or feel like I need to override hunger, but really just honor that. So it created a lot more peace in my relationship with food, but I still had this hormone dysfunction. I was still having all these imbalances. And so I really had to kind of do my own work in seeking advanced education, advanced nutrition to see what is actually going on here. And that is really when I dove into women's health and endocrine disorders and really eliminated and healed a lot of those hormone imbalances. And now I actually don't really experience a lot of the symptoms, which is something that I offer for clients, that there is hope that even with this chronic illness, that you don't need to experience those symptoms day to day. So that's what I offer to my clients now. I don't think you have to have, past experiences in order to serve this population, but I think it really energizes my work and provides a extra layer of empathy towards my clients and what they're struggling with.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I was never diagnosed with PCOS, but I think I tend towards more of like the adrenal PCOS type of presentation. And I know that any hormonal symptoms I have are usually indicative of lifestyle issues going on. So I always use it as a barometer for, maybe I need to have some downtime, or my meal patterns are not the best, or whatever's going on, if my period gets out of whack or if I get any sort of hormonal symptoms. So to be fair, I graduated grad school 7 years ago. So I don't know if I remember entirely, but I don't necessarily remember learning a ton in my nutrition program about PCOS and about like strategies for it. And it's interesting because PCOS is so common. I think what the stat is like 1 out of 10 for sure are diagnosed. And then, if you think about people like me who have those tendencies but never got a diagnosis, I'm sure it's even more common than that. So just knowing that, at least 10% of women are dealing with it, it's like why there isn't more information being shared, or like you said, you went to your doctor and they said, okay, take the pill. Like that's the solution. It's just really unfortunate. But also I think it's really cool to have people like you. And a lot of the women that I work with as a business coach are also looking at PCOS as the main focus of their practice. And I think it's really cool that this is something that business owners like you can get into the deep details of really how to solve and to offer that solution to somebody in a way that's not just take the pill and do a low carb diet, right? Because those are the things that everybody gets recommended. So talking about PCOS, I know that I have a lot of people come on this show talking about PCOS in a lot of different angles. And, we'll keep talking about it because I feel like so many women with PCOS don't really understand what's going on, or they are given inaccurate information. So the more we talk about it, the better. But I know that PCOS as a syndrome is very inappropriately named. As I'm sure the ovaries don't have to be even involved in having PCOS symptoms necessarily, or they're not necessarily the root of why somebody would be experiencing PCOS symptoms. So can you explain to our audience, how does PCOS affect more than just your ovaries?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, quite the misnomer, definitely. And I think because it is called PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, people feel like the ovaries are the problem, right? Oh, there's all these cysts on my ovaries. And clients will tell me this, yeah, I saw it on the ultrasound. And I always tell them that doesn't really tell me much, if really anything, about what's going on. Polycystic ovaries and PCOS, the syndrome that comes with polycystic ovaries, is a huge umbrella term. It covers so many different root drivers. It affects more than just your ovaries. At a physiological level, it affects your adrenals, your thyroid. It can affect your neurotransmitters, right? All that stuff. And then as a result, that leads to the symptoms that people experience more on a day-to-day basis, right? So the fatigue, the hair growth on the chin, hair loss, a lot of frequent hunger, or a lot of strong cravings. That's really what PCOS is. And unfortunately, because of the name, it gets really confusing and people aren't looking at the root drivers of what's causing so many of their symptoms. And so I'll use an example just to kind of distill like what is all this stuff that's happening around PCOS. So insulin resistance. Insulin resistance is probably one of the most common and key features that come with PCOS. So with listeners who don't know what insulin resistance is, I'll try to kind of summarize it in a concise way as possible. Basically, what happens is your cells are no longer sensitive to insulin. And insulin is kind of the key that unlocks the cell in order for it to receive carbohydrates and feel fed. Well, if your cells are not sensitive to insulin, then you may be eating carbohydrates, but your cells aren't really receiving it. And so your cells can feel starved to a certain extent, leading to these really intense cravings, leading to a lot of blood sugar swings. And in order to compensate for that lack of sensitivity, your body actually pumps out more insulin, which then also dysregulates your blood sugar. So that can cause a lot of these amplified feelings of hunger, amplified craving. But then we bring in, right, the weight gain, kind of like what I told in my story, which is also very common with insulin resistance. And many people will try to kind of wrestle their weight down, right? So try to go on a very restrictive diet, low calorie, low carb, things like that. Well, then you have all these amplified cravings, amplified hunger cues. You put those things together, and now you're on a slippery slope with a lot of anxiety around food, potentially a binge episode, right? Just around the corner from restricting, and finally giving in, and really just moving towards disordered eating. And so that's really the experience of PCOS that you can't see on an ultrasound, right? That struggle isn't this picture of these polycystic ovaries. It's a very complex experience that really disrupts people's quality of life day to day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. And I know that technically you can have PCOS and not have any cysts on your ovaries. And so, it's something that name is so unhelpful. And I know that the various endocrine societies are discussing changing the name. So, which is funny because I'm like,
Hopefully.
well, I was going to say, so many of my clients have like the word PCOS in their program title name. So I'm like, hopefully they change it. And then also like, I hope that doesn't screw up a bunch of people's business models or have to have them rebranding or something like that. So with PCOS, like you were saying, a lot of times the recommendations that people are given, they're not, first of all, either they're not helpful or they can potentially cause a worsening of symptoms because of restrictive dieting or things that are causing inflammation or stress, all the different ways that these inappropriate recommendations can harm women. Why do you believe women with PCOS often have a disconnect with their bodies?
Yeah, so kind of based on what we're talking about here, right? All these symptoms kind of coming up that people don't like, that feel very uncomfortable, right? Having to feel hungry all the time, seeing your weight fluctuate, also regular periods, right? That's a very common symptom with PCOS, experiencing those things. And it can be very confusing, kind of like what you said, Laura. There's not a lot of education and clear information and direction on how to address PCOS. And so when people are experiencing those symptoms, the knee-jerk reaction is kind of to disassociate themselves with their body, right? Like, oh, I can't trust this body. This body is trying to sabotage me, right? I'm trying to diet. I'm trying to lose weight. And yet it's giving me all these cravings. And it can really lead to this experience of just distrust and even disgust. I've heard clients say that before, where they just feel disgusted towards their body. And I always say we can't hate a body that we're trying to heal. Right? If we're trying to wrestle it and fight it, then that's only going to cause more symptoms. In fact, I mean, I see that in my clients. I see that in my own experience when I was over exercising and I was under eating, that really so many symptoms were getting worse. And many times people will go with missing periods, or they'll show up in their skin, or they'll lose their hair, all these types of symptoms that are really challenging and uncomfortable. And so that is why I really emphasize a connection towards the body, because it is so easy to want to disconnect, right? To kind of separate ourselves from something that's foreign or something that we don't understand. But we really have to kind of put you and your body in the same room and really build this relationship of collaboration before we can even start with making changes in nutrition and lifestyle that are going to serve you. We have to know what's going on with you.
Mm-hmm. So the way that you approach PCOS, because I know that you combine both that intuitive eating methodology along with more of the functional medicine approach, which I think is really great, because either of them on their own, I don't think is a complete solution. If you're just doing intuitive eating, it's like, that's great, but probably not going to fix any symptoms, right? Like, unless you're like really, really good at it. And then with the functional medicine side, unfortunately, I find that a lot of functional medicine providers end up creating that disordered relationship with food or their bodies and that kind of thing. Not all, obviously, I don't want to say that all functional medicine practitioners do that, because clearly they don't, but it is something that I had just noticed when I was working with health clients over the last 7 years. Like, a lot of them were coming to me with a worsened relationship with food because they had seen another provider that put them on some kind of like super strict diet. And then they were like totally afraid to eat anything that wasn't on that list. So when you're working with clients, do you feel like it's more important to start with the intuitive process, or do you feel like it's starting with the functional process, or like, where do you fall? Because I know that your approach is a little bit unique compared to what maybe other people have experienced before.
Yeah, I think that's such a great question. I think it's actually what a lot of practitioners in this world, or in the women's health world, endocrine world, are trying to navigate. It really depends on the client, because a lot of my specialty is kind of merging these two worlds. Most of my clients do have a background of disordered eating or poor body image and things like that. But I also do get clients who feel really good with food, and they don't have a lot of complex beliefs around food. They're not really restricting. They really just want some guidance and education. So kind of running an initial health assessment is so important. So I know what the client needs, and we're not talking about stuff that's not relevant to them. That being said, if someone comes in with some type of disordered eating, disordered relationship with food, they're restricting and then finding themselves binging, it's really hard to implement really any type of functional medicine or nutrition or lifestyle change, because all those changes become these very legalistic rules for them. And they feel so disassociated with their body that they may know these things, but they can't really do it because their body is feeling very chaotic. They have these amplified hungers. They're feeling these really low blood sugar moments. And it can be really disruptive and also make them feel really frustrated, right? Well, I know all this stuff. The dietitian is telling me to do all this stuff. Why can't I do it? And so I really build a foundation when it comes to disordered eating on body trust. And I always tell my clients that first and foremost, like, look, we're going to really do some work on reconnecting with your body. I know it's not sexy, right? Like the sexy stuff is like, the supplements and changes in nutrition and vegetables and, sleep and exercise and all that stuff that people love to talk about. But unless we really understand what's going on with your body, what can we really do, right? Besides all kind of the bells and whistles of nutrition and lifestyle change. And so it's really kind of setting this foundation of, can you start listening to your body, responding to it appropriately, and even interpreting it? Because a lot of people feel hunger, but they don't really know what type of hunger. It could be a physical hunger. It could be emotional hunger. It could be an insulin resistant type of hunger. But all they know is they feel hungry and they feel craving and they don't know what to do about it. And so my job as a clinician is really to help clients navigate that when they experience a binge episode, right? Can we look at that and say, okay, what happened? What was your meal before then? What were even the ways that you thought about those foods, right? Not just looking at the physiological aspect of PCOS, but also how it affects their mental and emotional state and how disordered eating comes into that. So reconnecting with the body is so key. And that way, as their body changes down the road, they have tools to navigate that, because the body that they're working with now in our conversation may not be the same body 2 years, 3 years down the road. And so if they have those tools to be able to understand their body, then they're way better off than just following some meal plan or, short-term protocol.
Definitely. So for people listening who feel like they're not sure where they're at, because they're like, well, I really want to make changes. I really want to feel better. I want to improve these symptoms. But then they do feel concerned that maybe they are experiencing disordered mindset around food. To me, I think like I definitely went through, I want to say it was probably like 10 full years. If I go back to like high school when I first started dieting, like between then and maybe like my mid-20s was where I had a lot of, it wasn't like every day for 10 years, but there was a lot of like highs and lows, and it really just depended on mostly what my body looked like. Big surprise, right? But what I was going to say is that I don't think people that are dealing with those issues always realize that they are until they're on the other side of it and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I lived that way, or I can't believe I was doing that to myself. So if somebody's not sure if their relationship with their body or their thoughts around food are appropriate or not, is there any like red flags or warning signs that you would suggest that they pay attention to let them know if that is part of their challenge?
Yeah, of course. One question that I very often ask is just, what % of the day are you thinking about food in your body? And that really just allows people to take an inventory of their thoughts and how they're navigating food and how they're navigating their body size on a day-to-day basis. Because they may get used to that, right? They think it's normal for them to be always checking themselves in the mirror, always criticizing their food, worrying about what the food is going to do to their body. And that's very disruptive and very distracting. And so if someone tells me I'm thinking about my body 80% of the time, then that is a red flag for me to really dive deeper and better understand why, right? Why do they feel so obsessive around their body and around food? And that's really, we can open up kind of some questions. Oh, well, how do you make a food decision, right? If they only think certain foods are good and certain foods are bad, then that can create a lot of shame and guilt around their food decisions. Or if, they're following some diet they found online, right, like keto or whatever it may be, but it's creating a lot of anxiety around food, then again, that's where that body trust comes in. And I can kind of tease that out. Like, well, does that actually make you feel good? Do you feel better with food, or do you find yourself constantly obsessive around it or feeling really isolated in social settings because you can't fit your nutrition to some type of keto plate? And that allows people to really reflect, oh, like this anxiety that I'm feeling around food, it doesn't have to be that way. And there is freedom from that.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I was reading a book that did talk about the author's experience with disordered eating. I think she had I want to say it was binge eating disorder. Like she was binging, and I don't know if it was exercise bulimia or I don't remember the exact details, but I just remember a lot of what she was talking about was this idea that kind of mindset really was keeping herself so focused on herself and worrying about herself, like very inwardly focused. And I do think there's a season that we can go through for experiencing a health issue where we do need to be a lot more inwardly focused and learning what our body signals mean and being able to pay attention to that stuff. But I think what I always want people to remember is that the goal is to get to a place where you're not thinking about your body that much, if almost at all. I know I think about, I definitely think about my body. I don't completely ignore it or ignore hunger signals, or if I'm not feeling well, I'll make some changes, or if I feel like I've been having too much wine or something like that, I'll make some adjustments because I know how I feel when I go too far in a certain direction away from what I know is healthy. But I think I feel like a lot of women don't understand that thinking about food all day, thinking about their body all the time, that whole self-checking kind of thing where they're very self-aware of their physical body, that's not actually normal. And that's not, I don't think, very conducive to living a life where they actually can do the things that they feel called to do or they feel are very valuable to them. So I feel like what we're talking about right now is really important for any woman that's listening that does feel like she spends a lot of time thinking about her body or paying attention to her body in a way that's not beneficial, right? Because it's again, I think when you're relearning that stuff, when you're learning what your hunger signals are, when you're learning what your body needs to feel good, there is a period of time that you're more focused, but that shouldn't be, the rest of your life where every single day you're writing down every single bite of food that you had, or journaling about your hunger and satiety signals. I really feel like the goal is to get to a place where you don't need to be paying attention quite so heavily anymore, because it becomes a much more, I hate to use the word intuitive because it's, it's very cliche, but basically getting to a place where you're not in this mental battle around what do I eat, why do I feel this way, that kind of thing, that you can actually figure it out relatively quickly because you do have that sense of trust with your body. So I know I just went off on a little tangent there, but it's something that I think when we have conversations like this, I don't know how long ago you had that experience personally, if it was 2 years ago, if it was 10 years ago, but I feel like the farther out I get from that time in my life, the more I'm wow, I'm so glad I don't live like that anymore, because I'm not even really sure what my life would look like if I had stayed in that mindset. I don't know if you have any personal opinion about that.
No, definitely. I always say, health is not the destination, right? It's the vehicle for everything else in your life, for you to build relationships, fulfill your purpose, to seek the greater things that actually ground you in this life. But unfortunately, especially in our culture, I think health is so glamorized, right? The health and wellness industry, the billion-dollar industry, really makes it seem like the goal is to be always thinking about your health and for everything in your life to evolve around, quote, health, right? And I put it around quotes because at that point, I think in both of our experiences in our history, right, that obsession really didn't create health for us. It personally for me made my world really small. It made me really obsessive over certain things and made me not able to think about things that really matter to me, like my family and my friends and my faith and all these things is just such a distraction. And so I think health is something wonderful, right? I mean, I'm a dietitian. I care about health. I think health is very valuable, but when we make it our sole purpose and the destination that we're trying to arrive at, one, it's a moving target, but two, we're going to get really lost in just the mess of it and really get distracted from things that really matter. So I love how you brought that up, because even for women who work in the healthcare world, I think differentiating why we're doing this work is really critical, so that we aren't just feeding into that health and wellness role, but really knowing that this is something to bring us to our greater purpose. And that's so important.
Yeah, definitely. And I almost feel like this wellness obsession is almost a overreaction or like an overcorrection to and I don't, I can go on rabbit trails sometimes, but I'm trying to think about like how best to say this, because I feel like that big push, and I don't know if it was like the 80s or when this would have really come into play, and especially in women's health, but I feel like the big feminism push for women to like work the way men work and to be like the same as men and to, be pursuing careers and all that. And I'm not denigrating that. Of course, I run my own business, so I'm not like against women having careers or anything like that. But I do think there was this big push for women to live like men, basically, like operate like men, have the same schedules, have the same career goals, that kind of thing. And I feel like that initial wave of that, feminism reaction probably led a lot of women to just ignore their body, right? Because if you think about, I know a lot of the women that I worked with that had stressful jobs, like they would be in the office for like 10 hours a day or something, and they would be sitting at their desk and they would be like eating lunch really fast at their desk, that kind of thing. And that way of living, that definitely creates dysfunction, right? And it creates this, like, you're ignoring what your body needs because you're so focused on work. And I know, even like as much as I know about health, there's definitely times where I get sucked up into the work that I'm doing and I forget to eat, or I, don't eat enough, or I run, 10 minutes through meal or something like that. So I'm not immune to it, but I do think that this wellness culture that's been developed in our modern, like, the last, 10, 15 years, maybe 20, I don't know. 20 years ago, I would have been 13, so I'm not sure I was really paying attention to it. But I do think it was kind of starting in like the 2000s with like Atkins diet and all the South Beach diet and that stuff that started to become really popular. But I feel like it was almost this cultural like overreaction to the problems that were caused by the whole women should be acting the same as men kind of feminism that got really popular in the 80s and 90s. And so I feel like we've just swung from this, like, ignore your body, don't pay attention to it, like, don't worry about your hunger, just have like Diet Coke and cigarettes and you'll be fine, to this super focus on quote unquote wellness, to the point where now wellness is your number one thing in your life that you're paying attention to. And I, as a Christian, as someone who likes to think about like, spiritual health as much, if not more, than physical health and all of that, I feel like both of those ends of the extreme are actually really harmful to women. And so I'm very hopeful that people like you, like practitioners like you, and people that I coach as a business coach, like the kind of lifestyle education that they're providing to their clients and the kind of coaching that they're providing, I feel like is getting away from those ends of the extreme and really allowing women to operate in a way that does work with their physiology and also allows them to use wellness as a tool and not necessarily just have wellness be this like, this obsession that I think it really became for a lot of women, especially those of us who, I feel like if you were growing up in the 90s and early 2000s, like I feel like our generation is very, like, wellness is just cool, it's like very trendy. And I feel like being able to come back to what women really need to really feel fully integrated in their lives. It's not just obsession with like yoga and green juice or like CrossFit and keto and all the different ways that we can, the different communities that we can find ourselves falling into. and I don't know specifically where I'm going with this, but I feel like you probably resonate just knowing what I know about you and your belief system, that we need a different paradigm for women that allows them to honor their body's needs and allows them to construct their life in a way that supports those needs, but also doesn't lead them to feel like their entire life has to revolve around their wellness practices. So I know I talked a lot. So I would love to hear your feedback on all of that.
Yeah, no, I so resonate with that. And that's kind of why I love the term body trust. Because think about like a friendship, right? When you trust a friend, you have like a friend that if you don't talk to for months, but then when you reconnect, it's easy. It seems like you just pick up right there where you left off because there's a trust, right, between you and that person. And that's really what body trust is. It's not this need to constantly be obsessing and criticizing and quote fixing, right, your body. There's this trust that it's built beautifully. It can do the things that it needs to do. It can tell you when to eat. It can tell you when to stop eating. And that, I think, sometimes gets oversimplified, right? Just like listen to your hunger and fullness. It's definitely more complex than that. If you're eating very chaotically, if you have hormone dysfunction, insulin resistance, then you may need more tools to navigate those body cues. But at the end of the day, to be able to, like you said, set some time aside to intentionally understand your body if you've been disconnected for so long. But then to be able to trust that your body is going to do what it needs to do. And it does. Think about when you run, right? Your heart rate goes up. You're not having to turn a dial up to speed up your heart in order for it to do what it needs to do and pump the oxygen where it needs to go. It does that for us. And every moment, every day, our bodies are doing so many things that we don't even know, we don't even appreciate. And yet we feel like, to use your example, like green juice is going to be the magic bullet to fix everything, right? So it's really like you said, that combination of, yes, being intentional with nutrition and honoring this body that we have and being willing to learn about it, but not to the point of having to obsess about it, because we can trust our bodies that it can do the things we need to do in order to live this life.
Mm-hmm, definitely. So to get into some practicals, since again, I need to reel myself in. Sometimes I go off on these little rabbit trails because I get excited when I know I'm talking to someone who has similar viewpoint as me. How do you help women with PCOS reduce or eliminate their symptoms?
Yeah. So I would say, and like I said, kind of varies from person to person, but I have these kind of pillars in the work that I do that I think are essential, no matter what you're bringing to the table. So foundationally, and I'll expand a lot more on this, is that body trust, right? Establishing body trust. Then I would say root cause treatment is so key. So not Band-Aids, not, some fast and furious weight loss program, right? Really looking at what is the root driver of the hormone imbalances that you're experiencing. And then finally, it's implementing a gentle approach to nutrition that meets 3 criteria. It has to be doable, it has to be enjoyable, and it has to be sustainable. And if it's not those things, I don't really care, because you're going to be able to do it for, say, a week, and then it's going to, fall on the wayside. So just to expand a little bit more on that body trust, right? Because I feel like that's been kind of a theme of what we're talking about today. Again, not as sexy as the lifestyle nutrition changes, but so essential to this work. And very often people are coming to me, maybe dieting, and what they do is they diet and then they give up and then they eat all the things and then they feel guilty and they go back on a diet. And they have no idea really how their body works, because they're following all this, what I call external wisdom in regards to their body, and have no idea what their internal wisdom is really speaking. And so we just create some space to do that. Now, I do offer structure around that. So whether that's kind of eating at specific times, because your body thrives on rhythms, it's really hard to know what your body cues are when you're eating very chaotically, when you're skipping lunch, when you're maybe trying to intermittent fast and override your signals, right? All those things can be really harmful. So we start creating some rhythms that you can better understand what are some needs that your body is communicating to you. And so once we can do that, once food is normalized, you're not having all this anxiety and judgment around food, then we can start looking at, well, what are your hormones looking like? Because your hormones, especially with PCOS, isn't going to look like someone else with PCOS. There's so many different root causes, hormone imbalances. And so I use some comprehensive hormone testing to see, well, what is going on there? What do your labs look like? Or else we can be walking in the dark with what's going on just by looking at symptoms. And then once we can figure out what are your root causes, then we can start implementing some very targeted and personalized treatment options with nutrition and lifestyle in order for you to feel better and to reduce or eliminate your symptoms.
I love it. And I feel like, again, just kind of coming full circle, so many practitioners either do one or the other these days. It's like you're either, strictly this intuitive eating dietitian or coach or whatever we want to call it, or you're a functional medicine provider and you are, hyper focused on the testing and the supplements and all that. And I feel like I just love that you combine both of them because I think there's a lot of value to both. But I also, as I said, probably 20 minutes ago, I don't think either on their own is going to be enough for most people. And unfortunately, I feel like I hear a lot more opposition coming from the intuitive eating communities around implementing specific diet changes or implementing, things that maybe you would argue could be a little bit of a diet, quote unquote, right? Like I hate that diet is now this like 4-letter word, right? Where it's like, I'd like to just be able to talk about diet in a way that is neutral, kind of like exercise is not a bad word, right? Like sleep is not a bad word. So why diet is now this bad word? I just, I get that they're trying to separate from diet culture or restrictive dieting, but I do think diet is something that does affect people's health, right? Like making choices that go against what's good for your body it's going to end up reflecting in your symptoms, right? So it's like, I think sometimes the intuitive eating or health at every size kind of community, which I kind of lump them all together, sometimes I see a lot of this, anything that tells you to, look at macros or, take a certain food out or something, that's diet culture. And I don't know if you have any perspective on that, because I know I can get a little sassy about it because I'm like, I think understanding macros is perfectly fine and it doesn't have to be disordered or anything like that. So do you have any perspective on that criticism that can come from the extreme end of those communities saying that doing any sort of intentional manipulation of your diet is diet culture?
Yeah, no, definitely. Such a tricky thing because people get real hyped up about that conversation. I think, if we really polarize what people can do in their health, it can create a lot of kind of shame around making changes. And I think that's just not fair, right? Here we have food, nutrition, lifestyle as these beautiful tools to be able to really make a change in how we feel. And yet I have clients telling me that they feel scared to make those changes because, then I'm engaging in diet culture. And I really want to challenge that because at the end of the day, these are all tools. And what has been really great about meeting other dietitians and meeting and learning about their practice is that there's so many tools that can help so many different people. And I think very often the intuitive eating, maybe health at every size world, they're coming from a perspective of diagnosed eating disorders. And so I can understand how maybe macros would be very triggering and not helpful in that case. But that's not everyone, right? People fall on that spectrum from eating disorders to disordered eating to a very healthy relationship with food. And it is really our job as clinicians to be responsible with the information that we know and use tools, use education that will actually serve the client based on where they are, based on how they think about food. And so, yeah, I hate how the word diet is, and it is a 4-letter word, which is interesting, but people use it as like this dirty word now. But diet, your nutrition can be very, very powerful. And when people can approach it from a place of really empowerment and nourishing in their body and not this hard, fast rule that they need to stick to or else, then usually it creates a lot of freedom because it relieves them of their symptoms. And when they aren't struggling with those symptoms all the time, they can feel so much better in their life and really focus on the things that matter. So yeah, both ends, right? And I also know functional medicine, practitioners who are kind of against the intuitive eating world, thinking that it's this, free for all type of approach to nutrition. And I can see that too, right? That like a free for all approach to nutrition isn't going to help someone with very specific nutrition needs. But if the client is in a place where they feel very chaotic around eating, then we really have to give the time and space for them to heal their relationship with food first. And I think just out of the goodness of our hearts, at least that's what I hope. We want clients to get better, right? So we're like, okay, like let's do these things. Let's, make lifestyle changes. But if the client's not ready to do that because they've been trying all these rules and trying all these diets, and that's only leading to a lot of anxiety around food, then we have to slow down, maybe set our ego aside, right? And really meet the client where they're at and help them navigate their relationship with food first.
I love it. And yeah, definitely the functional medicine world is not, there's some recommendations or some beliefs they have about intuitive eating, health at every size that I think are harmful. And again, I'm polarizing camps here. I definitely think there's a lot of people in either both camps, or as you've really fallen into kind of this like mix of the philosophies and using those as, like you said, tools and not this like dogma that has to be adhered to or anything like that. I really feel like more practitioners need to be open-minded about different approaches, and maybe that doesn't mean that they have to use it in their practice, right? Like somebody who's an intuitive eating dietitian does not have to learn how to do functional medicine, and someone who's in functional medicine doesn't necessarily have to learn how to be this super effective intuitive eating coach. But I do think that seeing them as viable tools and referring out if necessary, right? Like knowing that, hey, like we've gotten you to this place where you're able to intuitively eat. Great. You're still having a lot of these symptoms of insulin resistance. Now it's probably time to see a functional provider. Or if you're a functional provider and you're like, wow, this person has a lot of severe, hangups and fears and all this stuff around food, I'm not trained to deal with that. Let me make sure that they're getting support from someone who does have that training. So I feel like I would love to see more collaboration and integration rather than this, like you're either in the intuitive eating haze camp or you're in the functional medicine camp, and those are the camps you get to pick from. And sadly, I just think that's a state of our world these days, is a lot of polarity and kind of like, tribalism with that kind of stuff. So all of that said, I think it's really great that you combine both worlds so elegantly. And I really think it's going to benefit your clients a lot more than if you were someone who is like, this is my philosophy and there's nothing about the other philosophy that would be beneficial. So my last question for you, I know you have a free guide that covers a variety of mistakes, and we can talk about that in just a second. But what would you say is the biggest mistake that women make when trying to improve their PCOS?
Yeah, I would say the biggest mistake is focusing on weight. And that's probably the mistake that most people that I work with are dealing with. The truth is, weight is a symptom of hormone imbalances and underlying root causes of those hormone imbalances. But unfortunately, weight is treated as the problem, right? And I get that because it's very visual, right? People have blind spots. They see someone in different body sizes. They, I can feel like I'm making an accurate diagnosis by saying that, oh, you should just lose weight. But we really aren't understanding why, kind of like in my story in the beginning of our conversation, right? Why did I gain a significant amount of weight in a short period of time out of nowhere? And so that can lead to a lot of just frustration and a lack of hope, because people then try to lose weight without addressing underlying hormone imbalances. And they may be successful because if you starve yourself, you will probably lose some weight in the short run, but your body will take over, it will survive, and it will amp up your hunger cues. And very often that's what people experience, that kind of pendulum swing of weight loss, weight gain, weight loss, weight gain. And that can be really disheartening. And so I always say, focusing on weight is really putting the cart before the horse. And what I do is really focus on those root causes, right? Okay, let's look at your hormones. Let's look at your insulin levels. And so that we can figure out why you're experiencing all these symptoms. And then we can stay open to what can happen to your weight, right? Because weight is a symptom. If we're treating your hormones and you have healthy hormones and you have a healthy relationship with food, then your weight should end up at a healthy place as well. So if we focus on the weight, then we're really going to end up just start playing whack-a-mole with a lot of symptoms. So yeah, I think that's the biggest distraction, biggest mistake that clients can make. And if we can really focus on the root causes, then they can just start feeling better a lot quicker.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Well, and like I said, I know you have a free guide that covers some other mistakes. So do you want to tell the audience about that?
Yeah. So I have a guide, and it's a bit of a workbook. So there's questions that you can ask yourself and reflect on just to better understand what you may be doing in regards to your PCOS and where you may be going wrong. So it's called 5 Mistakes That Hold You Back from Overcoming PCOS. And we go through these 5 mistakes, one of them being focusing on weight. And it really creates just some space for you to better understand why these mistakes may be causing issues, especially with weight, right? Just to kind of go off that last question, there's so much glamorization around weight and weight loss. You may get, comments from your friends and family. And so you may feel like, well, I'm doing the right thing. I'm getting all these affirmations. But in that workbook, I really kind of go into why those approaches aren't really helpful in the long run. So you can go on my website to my homepage and download that workbook and use it to really get a better understanding about PCOS, and then knowing your mistakes, identifying your mistakes, pivoting down a path that is going to be more helpful for your health.
Awesome. I love it. And one more question I'll ask you, which is one that I often throw in to everybody. I don't know if you listen to my show or not, but that question is, what do you believe makes a person more than a body?
Yeah. Such a beautiful question. And we're recording this on a Monday, so I think it's so great to think about that, going into a work week. I really think it's where your value lies. Unfortunately, our culture really places value in body size or the status of your health. And all these things that, like we talked about today, can be very distracting. But for me, because I have strong roots in my faith, I know that even if my health changes, even if my period goes missing for a few months, even if my weight fluctuates, that my values aren't going to change because I have values rooted in something that never changes. And so that creates a lot of freedom in my life. It makes me not have to obsess about my body, even when things change. And that just opens your life to so many other things than just health and body size.
I love it. And I agree with all of that. So mic drop on that one. So if our listeners want to connect with you, I know you mentioned your website, womenwisenutrition.com. We'll link to that in the show notes. Is there any other good way for them to get more from you?
Yeah, so you can follow me on social. My Instagram handle is Woman Wise Nutrition. That's woman with an A. And I provide a lot of education and some inspiration on there. I kind of challenge some misconceptions about hormones and things like that. And you can kind of stay connected with me on social. So there, like you said, on my website. And then if you have any questions, you can email info@womanwisenutrition.com.
Awesome. So we will definitely link to her website and her social media handle. And I would definitely recommend following her because I also love the content that you put out on Instagram. And it's really, again, just disrupting some false beliefs around hormone health and women's health in general. So it's really great. So anyway, thank you so much for your time today, Isabel. It was a really great conversation. I feel like I could have kept talking to you for a lot longer, but I know that we'll just have to have you come on the show in the future again. And thank you to the listeners for spending the last hour with us. Hopefully this was helpful for you to understand more about not only PCOS, but hormone health in general and combining that intuitive and functional approach. So we'll look forward to seeing you here next week on the Fed and Fearless podcast. Take care, everybody. Are you a dietitian or nutritionist business owner that wants to create an online business that attracts, converts, and serves your dream clients? Then keep listening, because I have a special opportunity that will help you create the profitable, joy-filled nutrition business that you always wanted. In my signature group coaching program, the Nutrition Business Accelerator, you'll learn how to start, grow, and scale your online nutrition business to 6 figures and beyond, so you can experience the financial and time freedom that you desire. Inside the program, you'll learn how to attract high-paying clients who are excited to work with you and willing to pay you the rates you deserve. You'll get training on how to effectively sell your services in a way that feels authentic and converts prospects into paying clients without feeling pushy or salesy. And you'll get step-by-step instructions on how to create programs and services that provide transformative results, leading to glowing testimonials and referrals from your current clients so you can have the greater impact that you desire in the world around you. Inside the program, you'll get mentorship and guidance from me, a compassionate coach who's built her own multi-6-figure online nutrition business. So that way you never have to feel stuck in your business again. I created this program to help struggling dietitian and nutrition entrepreneurs get clarity on who they serve, how they serve them, and how they can stand out in a crowded market so they can more easily attract dream high-paying clients into their online nutrition business. If this sounds like something you're interested in, go to lauraschoenfeldrd.com/NBA to learn more about the program and get on the wait list. That's lauraschoenfeldrd.com/NBA, which is short for Nutrition Business Accelerator. Doors are opening soon, and you don't want to miss out on this one-of-a-kind business coaching opportunity. Let's accelerate your nutrition business together. I'll see you in the program.